Good morning, Canada. Welcome back to an episode of Question Period. Today is June 19th, 2025. And wow, the news is not stopping. It's not slowing down for anybody. You have tensions are still pretty high between America, Iran, and just the ongoing tensions in the Middle East, which pretty much involve the rest of the world directly and indirectly. You also have Mark Carney addressing Canadians early this morning. So we're going to be taking a look at that. There's a lot to take a look at. Seems like Carney is back in Ottawa, so chances are he is going to be, well, he's actually scheduled to appear in Parliament for Question Period. So this is going to be a pretty exciting day. So before we get into it, I do want to encourage everybody to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does tremendously help grow the channel. This is pretty freaking intense, folks. The war in the Middle East, or the looming war in the Middle East, with the fact that America might be doing something, and the fact that Canada would also be joining America, because historically that's just been the case, seems to be leaving us on pretty freaking high tensions. And I, for one, think that Iran not allowed nuclear weapons. So that is what it is, and whatever happens. But instead of listening to me, let's take a look at what the White House says, because they are breaking their silence for the first time in days. Direct quotes from the president, not on Truth Social, but right from the White House. So here we go, folks. This is pretty intense.
Now, regarding the ongoing situation in Iran, I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today. So we'll kick it off for questions here in our new media seat. We have Eli Lake from the Free Press. Eli, go ahead. And
Thanks so much for having us.
So 2 weeks. We got a 2-week buffer to figure out what the heck is going on with the war in the Middle East, America's involvement, if so de facto, Canada's also bilateral involvement.
Thank you.
The Free Press. The decision to extend the, I guess, delay in enforcing the TikTok ban.
Sure.
Can you talk about how the White House understands its constitutional authority in light of the Supreme Court's decision in January that said that the president had to enforce the ban?
Sure. Well, as all of you know, because the president put it out on his Truth Social today, he did sign an executive order to extend the TikTok ban for 90 days. So in the effort to make a deal, and the White House counsel and the Department of Justice have reviewed this executive order, and I can get it for you. I think it's on our website by now. If it's not, my team will now put it up immediately. And you can read the language in that executive order. And the White House counsel's office and the Department of Justice strongly believe in the legal rationale for this executive order. They wouldn't have the president's pen hit it if they didn't. And the political reasoning for this, of course, is because the president made a promise to keep TikTok on. There are 100 million Americans who use this app. It's wildly popular. He also wants to protect Americans' data and privacy concerns on this app, and he believes we can do both things at the same time. So he's making an extension so we can get this deal done.
Can I get a follow-up?
Sure.
A few weeks ago, Tucker Carlson reported on a meeting between the president, Mark Levin, and others at the White House. Is there a leak investigation, and can you say who else was in that meeting?
I'm not aware of a leak investigation at this time. I, for one, do not reveal details about the president's private meetings without his permission to do so. But certainly the president does not like when people leak. He takes that very seriously. This entire administration takes that seriously, and that's why you've seen at agencies some of the cabinet secretaries have been given the authority by the president to let go of staff who are engaged in such leaks, especially those that risk American national security. Sure. Go ahead.
Caroline, thank you. So Rhino warmonger Lindsey Graham, he recently called on the U.S. to go all in.
That's quite the lead to a question.
Right. What's your message to everyday Trump supporters? Not the Tucker Carlsons or other big names, but everyday Trump supporters, grassroots who voted for President Trump to stop the wars, rejected this in the primary, going into another war with voting against Nikki Haley, and they want to see non-U.S. involvement in this war. What's your message?
Trust in President.
Okay, so the big misconception here is that Trump is trying to start a war. He's not trying to start a war. He's not getting America involved in a war. There's a very clear rule that Iran and terrorist regimes are not allowed nuclear weapons. Obviously, Trump knows something that the rest of us don't know. I would hope so, given that he's the most powerful person in the entire world. And if he's saying that there's a big problem, then we all got to kind of trust that decision that there's a big problem. So when it comes to this stuff, you're either in or you're out. It's not being a warmonger. It's not being pro-war. It's being protective of the world and making sure that Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons.
President Trump has incredible instincts, and President Trump kept America and the world safe in his first term as president in implementing a peace through strength foreign policy agenda. And with respect to Iran, nobody should be surprised by the president's position that Iran absolutely cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. He's been unequivocally clear about this for decades, not just as president, not just as a presidential candidate, but also as a private citizen. In fact, I have some quotes for you. In 2011, President Trump said, America's primary goal with Iran must be to destroy its nuclear ambitions. We cannot allow this radical regime to acquire a nuclear weapon that they will either use or hand off to terrorists. In 2015, the president said the problem is that Iran poses an existential threat to Israel, our Middle Eastern allies, and the United States. And of course, the president has repeated that in his first term as president and his second term as president as well. That's why he was adamantly opposed to the disastrous Iranian nuclear agreement that was implemented by President Obama. And it's why he has given great latitude and given a lot of effort to achieving a diplomatic solution. But he's been very clear. Iran went for 60 days when he gave them that 60-day warning without coming to the table. On day 61, Israel took action against Iran. And as I just told you from the president directly, he will make a decision within 2 weeks.
A follow-up?
Sure. Go ahead, Natalie.
Thanks, Caroline. Can you confirm whether Steve Witkoff has been in touch with the Iranian foreign minister? And does Witkoff plan to go to Geneva tomorrow for talks?
I am not tracking that on Mr. Witkoff's travel schedule, but I can certainly check in with him to be sure. As for correspondence between the United States and the Iranians, I can confirm that correspondence has continued. As you know, we were engaged with 6 rounds of negotiations with them in both indirect and direct ways.
Thanks, Kelly. Just to clarify the president's statement just now, when he says that he'll make a decision in the next 2 weeks, is he saying that if Iran does not come back to the negotiating table within the next 2 weeks, that the president will strike?
The president is saying that he will make a decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks. It's very clear and direct.
And is he seeing any signs of progress? He obviously is holding out hope for negotiations, but is he seeing any inklings of progress that give him that hope that talks are still possible?
Well, that's why he said in the statement that I just read for all of you, based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, he will make that decision within the next 2 weeks.
What makes him think there's still a substantial chance, is my question.
I'm not going to get into the reasoning and the rationale the president believes that, but that's his position, and he will make a decision within the next 2 weeks.
Caroline.
Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. President Trump has said previously in regard to Russia, he's used this phrase about 2 weeks several times in terms of like, we expect like a 2-week deadline and then you give another 2-week deadline. How can we be sure that he's going to stick to this one on making a decision on Iran?
Well, in those deadlines, as you've seen in respect to Russia, Ukraine, might I add, these are 2 very different, complicated global conflicts, as you know, that the president inherited from our previous incompetent president in the weakness of the previous administration. And the president has spent a tremendous amount of time and effort cleaning up these crises that were caused by the last administration's just complete dereliction of duty on the world stage and American weakness. Now we have American strength again. With respect to Russia and Ukraine, because of that American strength and the president's leadership, we have seen these 2 sides engage in direct negotiations. And the last time the president said 2 weeks, you saw Russia and Ukraine have direct negotiations for the first time in years. And so the president is always interested in a diplomatic solution to the problems and the global conflicts in this world. Again, he is a peacemaker in chief. He is the peace through strength president. And so if there's a chance for diplomacy, the president's always going to grab it. But he's not afraid to use strength as well, I will add. Franchise.
Honestly, the display of military strength that America is putting on right now is probably one of the most badass things that I've seen a president do. because he hasn't taken action. They haven't taken action yet. They're preparing in case they need to take action. And to be honest, the preparedness strategy that America just displayed, how they shifted so many of their assets to the surrounding areas within striking distance of Iran, also within a much closer distance to China and Russia, which are still ongoing threats, not necessarily threats the way Iran is a threat right now, but still potential threats, is absolutely badass. China and Russia, looking at their situation right now, seeing that America is surrounding them, they must be shitting bricks, because what America is doing is totally freaking badass. They now have the best reason to park off of all those coasts and to monitor the situation and to make sure that everybody's playing nice. It is absolutely incredible. And he's not doing anything other than just showing, hey, we're here. We've been here. We're ready. And there's nothing you could say and there's nothing you could do. You try to do anything, bye-bye. Bye-bye. And that's how America historically has functioned, and America is back. There's a massive shatter right now in the right, on the conservative side of things. A lot of Trump supporters, a lot of big American Trump accounts are going, oh, Trump, this isn't what we voted for, like Alex Jones and all that stuff. This isn't what we voted for, blah, blah. This is exactly what you voted for. America first. And America first is right now. It's happening. Trump is showing it. He's not going to war with anybody right now. He doesn't want to go to war with anyone. He's the best negotiator that there ever was. That's why Trump got voted in. This is incredible what he's doing. So all these big conservative accounts that are like trying to rag on Trump, saying that what he's doing is wrong and blah, blah, blah. Man, they're LARPing. They're LARPing. What happens if Iran has nuclear weapons? What happens if they launch a nuclear weapon? Then what? You're going to start saying, well, we shouldn't be going to war. It's not our war. Yeah, it is. America is imperialism. It's either America dominates the world in a certain form, which they have been doing with trade, with money, with currency, and military might, or we all have to learn Mandarin. Take your pick. I don't want to learn Mandarin. I don't want my kids to learn Mandarin. No. Keep doing what you're doing, Trump. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And now you're going to find out who the real conservatives are. I'm going to say it. I'm losing subscribers. I'm losing followers. I don't care. You're going to find out who the real conservatives are, because conservatism is about protecting our sovereignty, protecting our democracy, protecting the world. And we, Canadians, let's just lump us in with America to make it easier, okay? Trump is displaying something that has been needed to be displayed for so long. He's not going in guns blazing. He's not starting a war with the Middle East. He's staying true to the values of conservatism. Terrorist regimes are not allowed nuclear weapons. This isn't about fighting for Israel. And this is where you're going to find who the LARPers are and who the real... You're either in or you're out. That's what Ted Cruz said to Tucker Carlson in that interview. When it comes to war, you're either in or you're out. Me, this channel, we're in. We're in. There's no out. You're not out. You're a LARPer if you're out. You want to call yourself a conservative? You want to say you support Trump, you support conservatism, but you don't want to stand up to terrorist regimes? You're out. Get out of here. Easily show yourself to everybody. You're either in or you're out when it comes to this. And I'm sorry. I am sorry, but I'm not sorry. The world right now is extremely fragile. And what's the alternative? Joe Biden or Kamala going, well, whatever, just do whatever you want. No. Imperialism. Either somebody else is going to be imperialistic or America is imperialism. You don't like it? Go to a different part of the world. Go live in Iran. You're welcome to go live in China or Russia. This is how the world works. Our freedoms, our democracy, our freedom of speech, the land that we live on, that's all been done because of war. That's all been done because of what America is displaying right now. Sheer power and grit and ready to do what is necessary. And the fact that every military station out in the Middle East is ready to go, ready to rock and roll. And we are the closest. The destroyers that are off the coast of Israel right now are within 2,200 miles of Russia. Russia's shitting bricks right now going, oh, we can't do nothing. So you talk about the ability to monitor the situation. Trump just enhanced that tenfold. So all those countries that are threats, never mind just Iran, all those other countries that are threats to the rest of the world, they're now being heavily monitored. They can't do nothing. They move a pen across a table, Trump knows about it now. It's absolutely incredible. So you're finding out who the real people are that are in and the people that are out. And the people that are out are the ones that are going, well, this isn't what we voted for. Trump isn't, we didn't want him to start a war. He's not starting a war. If he wanted to start a war, he would have started a war. He doesn't want to start a war. The guy has been true to his values. He took a bullet for the country and then still campaigned. And you're questioning that guy? Give me a break. That's the most patriotic thing we've ever seen a president do. Come on, man. Come on. You're finding who the real conservatives are versus the LARPers right now. You're in or you're out, baby. You're in or you're out. That's it. It's plain. It's as simple as day.
Jessica.
Thanks, Caroline. What exactly would a deal with Iran need to entail?
No enrichment of a uranium, and it would absolutely not. Iran is not absolutely not able to achieve a nuclear weapon. The president has been very clear about that. And by the way, the deal that Special Envoy Witkoff proposed to the Iranians was both realistic and acceptable within its terms, and that's why the president is sent that deal to them.
To follow up on what you told Natalie, are the talks that the United States is currently having with Iran direct, or are those through intermediaries? And if so, which countries are acting as the intermediary right now?
Out of respect for the ongoing discussions and negotiations, I'm not going to get into the details of them.
Perfect. National
we've provided
security.
you confirmation for now. Go ahead. Sure. And then behind you, too.
Oh, okay. Sorry, thanks. Sorry. On the topic of negotiations and talks, does the president have any hopes or specific expectations for the talks tomorrow between European foreign secretaries and their Iranian counterpart?
Well, certainly the entire world is on the president's side when it comes to the fact that Iran cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. This is something that pretty much all of humanity, except for the Iranian terrorist regime themselves, agree upon. And so the president expects that Europe will deliver that message directly to the Iranians.
Why does President Trump believe that this 90-day extension on TikTok will provide more runway, perhaps, than the previous extensions that haven't led to a divestment deal?
Because it's more time to make a good deal. Simple question. Dasha?
Thank you so much. I know things are going day by day right now. The president wants maximum optionality. Is the possibility of the U.S. getting involved in regime change in Iran at all on the table at this point? And then I have one on
Sure. The president's top priority right now is ensuring that Iran cannot obtain a nuclear weapon and providing peace and stability in the Middle East.
And on Medicaid, Caroline, the Senate put forward Medicaid provisions, particularly a lower cap on state provider taxes that hospitals have said would lead to mass closures, particularly in rural communities. Is the president willing to sign a bill that includes those provisions that Republican senators like Josh Hawley say will lead to hospital closures?
Out of respect for the ongoing discussions that the White House is very much actively involved in with our friends in the United States Senate, I won't comment on that specific provision. Look, the bill hasn't been sent to the president's desk yet. There's more room for change. The president, for one, I will reiterate, has been very clear on his priorities with respect to Medicaid. He wants to see waste, fraud, and abuse ridden from the system to protect it for tax-paying citizens who deserve those much-needed benefits. He wants to prioritize the sick, the needy, the poor in this country who deserve those benefits, not the 1.4 million illegal aliens who are receiving them. And he wants to make sure this one big, beautiful bill kicks those illegal aliens off of this program to preserve it and protect it and strengthen it for the American people. And the president has been very clear in that message to his friends in the Senate. Jackie.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
Logistically, if the Iranians are getting to Geneva, does that mean they've found a way to get to the White House?
I am not going to get into hypotheticals, but as you heard from the president yesterday, they have expressed interest in doing so.
There's a lot
Philip.
of pressure on the president to come to the aid of Israel. There's a lot of pressure on him to finish the job with force. How is he balancing the concern that if he doesn't choose to do that, that it would send a message to Xi Jinping about the U.S. commitment to Taiwan?
Well, the president enjoys a very respectful and cordial relationship with China's president. He has long maintained that, even in his first term. And China and the United States share many strategic interests, both in terms of economics and also, of course, global affairs and foreign policy as well. However, when it comes to balancing these different viewpoints, the president is balancing a lot of viewpoints, and he is listening not just to other world leaders, but to his advisors and to people here in the country and the American people too. And I think that's what makes this president such a great leader, is his ability to listen and make a good decision on behalf of the American public based on his instincts and his experience. Don't forget, this is a president who was here before, and the world was a much more peaceful and stable place when he left office than when he came back in after the past 4 years of complete incompetence by the previous president. Philip, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. Two quick questions. When the president says Iran is very close to a nuclear weapon, is he relying on U.S. intelligence or intelligence sharing from an ally?
None of your business, boy.
It is a fact, and the United States government maintains this fact, that Iran has never been closer to obtaining a nuclear weapon.
And then if the U.S. were to take some type of military action, would the president go to Congress to seek war authority?
I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals. I gave you the statement from the president. He'll make a decision within 2 weeks.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline.
Mary and then Elizabeth.
Two questions, one on Iran and then the second on something Jasmine Crockett said this morning. So given that we know the Iranian government did order an operative to assassinate the president, is there concern that Iran might respond with non-traditional military ways to some kind of strike on Iran, such as another assassination attempt? And has the Department of Justice looked into this last attempt on the president's life?
I believe Secret Service and the FBI have looked into the 2 assassination attempts that took place against the president, both of which were sad days in our nation's history. So I would defer you to the Department of Justice on where those investigations stand. But as for your question regarding Iranian retaliation, I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals again, but I can assure the American public and the world that this administration is prepared and ready to defend American interests and assets, not just in the region, but here on our homeland as well.
Thank you.
The most badass American administration that we have seen in a very long time, if not ever. This is incredible. Incredible. And when it comes to push comes to shove, you're either in or you're out when it comes to this, ladies and gentlemen. You're either in or you're out. It's not about starting a war. It's never been about starting a war. Trump has been very expressive of that and very consistent with that messaging. It's about protecting the world. Iran, not allowed nuclear weapons. It's not about joining Israel in a war. It's not about fighting for the Jews or the Jewish people. It's about making sure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons. And you heard right from the White House right now that they've never been closer to having nuclear weapons than right this moment. So there you go. That's as clear as day. I'm not even going to entertain conspiracies about it, but I would love to know down in the comments what you guys think. Next up, we're going to take a look at what Mark Carney, Canada's Prime Minister, had to say in an address that happened moments ago.
Now, Canadian leadership will be defined not just by the strength of our values, but also by the value of our strength. The world wants to do much more, and work much more closely with Canada, and we're ready. Now, on Monday morning, I, with colleagues, met with President Trump to discuss international priorities as part of the G7, but also to further negotiate a new economic and security partnership between Canada and the United States. And as we've said repeatedly, we'll take all the time we need to get the best deal for Canada, but no longer. And seeing progress that's been made, President Trump and I agreed to pursue negotiations towards a deal within the coming 30 days. We'll continue these negotiations, of course, in good faith. In parallel, we must reinforce our strength at home and safeguard Canadian workers and businesses from the unjust U.S. tariffs that exist at present. And that's why we're announcing that Canada will be introducing a series of countermeasures to protect Canadian steel and aluminum workers and producers. And there's several, and I'm going to list them. First, Canada will adjust its existing counter tariffs on U.S. steel and aluminum products on the 21st of July, at the end of that 30-day period, in other words, we're going to adjust them to levels consistent with the progress that's made at that point on the broader trading arrangements with the United States. Secondly, we will implement reciprocal procurement rules, ensuring that only Canadian producers and producers from trading partners that provide Canada with tariff-free reciprocal access through trade agreements can compete for federal government procurement of steel and aluminum. Troisièmement, le gouvernement établira de nouveaux quotas tarifaires.
Why would he do that? Why would he go from English to French on the same points? That's so weird.
Quota au commerce et du moulage to favor the use of Canadian framework l'aluminium. The Government of Canada will also review its remission framework for automobiles to favor the use of Canadian steel and aluminum in Canadian-made products. And finally, we're creating 2 government stakeholder task forces, one for steel, one for aluminum, to monitor trade and market trends and to better support government decision-making and workers going forward. Remind that the $10 billion large enterprise tariff loan facility remains open to help affected businesses access the liquidity they need and to return to financial resilience as the market stabilizes. In short, the government is responding to the impact of the unjust U.S. tariffs with multiple tools. We will review our response as the negotiations progress. I'll be meeting with the premiers of the provinces and territories tomorrow to discuss this response and our broader coordination going forward. The next week, I will attend the Canada-EU Summit, as well as the NATO Summit, as part of Canada's new government's mission to strengthen and build security and economic partnerships with reliable partners. And this week, in this House, the Parliament has the opportunity to pass the core of our domestic economic response, the One Canadian Economy Act, because together, we as Canadians can give ourselves far more than the Americans can ever take away. Steel and aluminum workers are on the front lines of this trade crisis. These are the workers who will help us build one strong Canadian economy, the strongest economy in the G7. Alors, nous les protégerons, ainsi que leurs familles. Et nous
His French is so bad.
U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum states, but
anti-dumping tariffs because the U.S. Commence la période de questions. We'll start with the first question. Judah Melise, the Globe and Mail. Are you imposing anti-dumping tariffs because the U.S. asked you to as part of these negotiations over the 30 days?
The short answer, no, there was not a request from the United States, but it's a consequence of the U.S. actions. As you know, the U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum are global tariffs. They're not targeted specifically at Canada, but they, of course, affect our steel industries and our workers. And one of the consequences of that effect, or prospective consequences, is that steel from other countries, from third countries, start to come into Canada if we don't protect our industries. So we're setting these quotas. It's a long word, tariff rate quotas, but a quota for the amount of steel that can come in from third countries to limit that amount, to stabilize the market. And to be clear, we will be reviewing the level of those tariff rate quotas as this progresses. It depends on what the United States does, first and foremost with Canada, whether we come to an agreement in the next 30 days, but also what they do with the rest of the world.
Of course, there's going to be an agreement. He's going to agree to whatever Papa Trump tells him to agree to. It's that simple. Mark Carney campaigned on this bold stance that he was going to stand up to President Trump, right? Elbows up. And to be honest, it was a very similar messaging that the Conservatives had, minus the elbows up. We're going to stand up to Trump any way that we can. And the reality, to quote a liberal, is that there is no standing up to America, not from Canada. To be honest, not from any country in the world. You're not doing that. Whatever America says is whatever America wants, and it's what whoever's on the receiving end of that does. It's just that simple. We are bordering America. We have very little negotiation power. That doesn't mean that we can't have a good life. That doesn't mean that we can't prosper. Absolutely we can. But at the end of the day, there's no real bargaining chips that Canada has. And that is fine. So long as you're being transparent about it. We're working with America to better trade, right? We're trying to get better deals for everybody involved. Not we're going to stand up to these people. And so many people bought into that. That's the problem. The problem is not that we don't have bargaining chips against America. That's fine. We've lived and we've prospered very nicely next to America. It's fantastic. The problem is that people are LARPing, like what Mark Carney's doing, saying that he's going to stand up and you're going to make sure we get the best. No, you're going to make sure that you go to the meeting on time and whatever Trump says is what you do. That's exactly how this goes. Anyone who thinks differently is delusional. Maybe I'm delusional. I don't know. I could be very much delusional about this, but that's just how I see it.
Non, c'est parce qu'il y a et probablement.
Rolling out any additional support for the industry beyond the emergency loans that you mentioned. For example, would the government ever consider investing directly in a steel producer?
Well, it's an important question, and I'll say the following. First is that we're united in working on all forms of support for the industry short-term. Tariff measures we're announcing today, liquidity as necessary, but also a necessary restructuring of demand and the industry that will happen almost irrespective of what happens between Canada and the United States because of the global impact of the new U.S. trade policy. So that starts with buying Canadian steel and aluminum for federal projects, working with the provinces to do the same, making sure that the enormous infrastructure bill that's about to happen in this country if we get the One Canadian Economy bill through Parliament, the impact of these nation-building projects, making sure that those are taking advantage of our...
Wait, the One Canadian Economy bill, why does that sound like the big, beautiful bill that Trump's trying to do? I know it's not, because the One Canadian Economy bill is about breaking down interprovincial trade barriers, but just the way he said it and riding the high of listening to White House and press secretary and Fox News stuff, it just sounded very similar to the big, beautiful bill. That's all. That's funny.
Industries. Same with autos. Same with the new defense spending that will be considerable over the years. And what we're working together is on those policies to encourage the consumption of Canadian steel and aluminum, but also we will be looking at how to finance the bridge of two industries that have been very oriented north-south, not exclusively, but very oriented north-south, to be oriented towards Canada first, and then globally with reliable partners. Thank you.
Next question.
The only thing that I agree with that Mark Carney has done is how much money is going to be going into our defense spending. And I know the counter argument, well, we can't afford it. And you're probably right. We can't afford it. But when it comes to defense spending, I don't care. I don't care. We should be, if we have to, cut social programs and put more money into defense spending. I posted this recently on X. I posted, this is right from Wikipedia. Now, I cropped out all of the countries in between, but the top three, US, Russia, and China, they are in order for budget, military budget. And then going down the list, I think 18th is Israel, and 19th or 16th and 17th or 17th and 18th or whatever is Israel and Canada. Look at the budgets that Israel and Canada has. Very similar. And there's like 9 or 10 million people living in Israel. $27.5 billion, $27.2 billion. Almost tied at the hip. We are almost tied at the hip for how much we put into our military budget. Yet, we have 74 battle tanks. Israel has 1,300. We have no aircraft carriers. I think that Canada should have 2 aircraft carriers at the minimum. One on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. America has 11. Russia and China only have 3 combined. So that's pretty good. But we should be having more. Now, the next big number is right here. Combat aircrafts. Israel, because they are constantly fighting wars in the Middle East, they have 340 combat aircrafts. We have 86. Now, we were supposed to get 88 F-35s. We don't really know what's going to happen with that. That's going to cost about $9 billion. Well, that was the cost. I don't know what it's going to cost now. But we need more flights. We need more combat aircrafts, and we need more aircraft carriers. And we have 4 non-nuclear submarines, diesel-powered non-nuclear submarines. We should have nuclear submarines. We should have at least 2 nuclear submarines. They could stay underwater. The life expectancy they could stay underwater longer than the people in there would live. That's essentially what it is. Whereas a diesel-powered submarine, you got to refuel, you got to come back up, blah, 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 like all this stuff. Nuclear-powered submarine, they could stay down below forever. We need that. We need to put more money into our budget. So it's not just more money into our budget. We have almost the same budget as Israel, yet they have so much more stuff. And that's kind of the point that I'm getting at is, what the hell are we spending our money on? Because it's not stuff. It's not stuff. We're spending our money on, I don't even know, contracts, red tape. I don't even know what we're spending our money on. But we need to be putting money into things. We need things. My goodness, man. Canada is just so behind the times.
Great with Global News. Are you willing to sign the security and economic agreement that you've been negotiating with Mr. Trump if any of the Trump's tariffs are still in place after that deal is signed?
We're willing to sign a security and economic or commercial agreement with the United States that's in Canada's best interest, and only that. So that's the negotiation. That there is still some room to travel, so to speak, before we get to that point. But we have a deadline in order to achieve that. And if it's in Canada's interest, we'll sign it. If it's not, we won't.
So you're willing to sign a deal with the Americans and still have some of the tariffs that Donald Trump has signed still in place?
It's a negotiation right now. I was anticipating the en français. Sorry, yeah, it's a negotiation. We start from a position which is clear in terms of the tremendous contribution of Canadian workers, Canadian companies, first and foremost to jobs and livelihoods here in Canada, but to the competitiveness of the American, for example, specifically in the auto sector, where steel is and aluminum are so tightly tied, and our auto companies are so tightly tied. We are part of the core that makes American automakers competitive. It is in the U.S. interest as well. They have to fully see that. Thank you.
It's so funny to hear Mark Carney talk about competing with America to any capacity. Let me put this into perspective. America spends more money on the maintenance of their aircraft carriers than Canada spends on its entire defense budget. Isn't that sad? That's pathetic. That's like borderline pathetic. Anyways, folks, I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Should Canada be putting more money into our military, into things to protect ourselves, especially the Golden Dome, or should we just continue to rely on America and then get tariffed to death? Let me know what you guys think down below. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into question period. I hope you're ready because Mark Carney is there. So before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Question period.
Oral questions. The honourable member for Calgary East.
Is continuing the Trudeau tradition of breaking his promises and hiding from accountability. He refuses to table a spring budget while massively increasing government spending and keeping the parliamentary budgeting officer in the dark. And just like Trudeau, this guy can't even get a tax cut right. He promised $800, yet the average Canadian will only save $90 this year. Wow. Not even enough to get a hot chocolate from Tim Hortons weekly. So did this Prime Minister mislead Canadians during the election? Is he misleading them now, or both?
Yeah! The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I recognize the job of Prime Minister comes with many responsibilities. I didn't know addition and division were one of them. The parliamentary budget officer refers to the reductions for all Canadians. The vote that the members opposite supported this government on delivers a tax cut for the 22 million Canadians who pay taxes and drive this country forward.
The honourable member for Calgary East. Coming from the guy that doesn't even do his own grocery shopping, he's bragging about a $90 tax cut this year when his government's policies raised the cost of groceries $800. He's broken all of his promises, spending, tax cuts, high-priced consultants, and he's all elbows down on the U.S. And while he's begging on his knees in front of Trump, Canadians have high grocery prices, unaffordable homes, and rising crime. But wait, everyone should be grateful for a $90 tax cut this year. Why doesn't he just reverse his disastrous policies, drop a spring budget, and actually lower taxes for Canadians?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, a tax cut is a cut for those who pay taxes. 22 million Canadians pay taxes in this country. 86% of that tax cut goes to those in the first two tax brackets. When you have a two-earner family, the maximum tax cut is $840 a year. The members opposite think it's irrelevant. It's relevant for Canadians. It's building this economy. We're glad they voted for it. They just happen to have forgotten now.
Honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Last night we learned that the Prime Minister has an entire department of bureaucrats trying to manage his conflicts of interest, but they can't even tell us if the Prime Minister has set up a conflict of interest screen. And so that means that the former chairman of a multi-billion-dollar investment firm is sitting at the cabinet table and could be taking decisions that personally improve his financial standing. He's been Prime Minister for 100 days, but he's still jumping through these ethical loopholes. So why won't the Prime Minister stop hiding the truth from Canadians and come clean? What are your conflicts of interest?
I would just remind the member to direct his question through the chair. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unlike the member opposite, I'm proud of having experience in the private sector. I'm proud of having experience helping to build this country. I'm proud of having filed all my requirements in advance before required, including a screen for the conflict of interest. I wait on these.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Well, unlike the Right Honourable Prime Minister, I'm proud to have served our country in the Canadian Armed Forces in uniform. This Prime Minister seems to do whatever he thinks he can get away with. He voted for the Liberals' ban on gas-powered cars while Brookfield is heavily invested in the EV supply chain. We know that he used offshore tax havens in the Caribbean to avoid paying Canadian taxes. His own department won't even say if he set up conflicts of interest screens. So instead of maligning people who serve the country in uniform, why doesn't he stand up and come clean about his conflicts of interest?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Prime Minister, sorry. Battlefield promotion there. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud as Prime Minister to have made the biggest investment in our military in decades. I am proud to be reversing the decades of cuts of members opposite.
L'honorable député de Louis Saint.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent, Akib-Makawak. Mr. Speaker, on the campaign trail, the Prime Minister promised to lower taxes for families. An $825 tax cut was promised, but the PBO has set the record straight. It's not $825. It's over 3 times less than that, $270 per family. Can the Prime Minister tell Canadians he's sorry for misleading them? Mr. Speaker, there's a difference. between the average and the maximum. The maximum, yes, it is $840 per year. And that's a reduction for 22 million Canadians. Thank you for your support for that measure. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent, Akimak-Ruak. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is not confirming the truth. It is that Canadians will, on average, get barely $90, and for a low-income senior, it's only $50, not even $1 a week. When the Prime Minister was running Brookfield, if an executive promised him major savings and then missed the mark, if it was less than expected, does the Prime Minister say, yeah, let's keep going? Or would he tell that executive, why did you mislead me? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the future of Canadians and of young people and of seniors is a future where we are going to build this great country with legislation to create a single Canadian economy. Now, a member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, two colleagues of the Prime Minister on the question of links between tariffs and the C5 bulldozer, they gave us all kinds of crazy answers, sometimes funny, sometimes other. Now, I don't think there's any connection between the tariff war and the time required for C5 to eventually kick in. So I would like the economist and Prime Minister to explain to us what's the link between the tariff crisis and C5. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, there's a direct link between the C5 and the steel and aluminum industry. Now, there's a crisis because of the trade war with the U.S. C5 will enable us to we will create demand for steel and aluminum, for Canadian steel and aluminum, in order to build major infrastructure projects in Quebec and all across Canada. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. The government considers it a real feat to have shortened the assessment period to 2 years. And this is before shovels break ground, so before a project can even be started. For example, Trans Mountain, it took 12 years. So these projects take years. The trade war was an urgency. These measures will not help the aluminum industry for 10 or 12 years. In the meantime, what's the solution? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, that's an example. That's why we need to streamline the process. The process takes too long for major projects. And we have confidence that we will produce steel and aluminum, good jobs here in Canada, starting this summer. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. When it comes to managing the trade war and the tariffs, let's remember that after making a whole bunch of compromises around the border, around defense, and there's lots of things that we still don't know the details of. The Prime Minister's strategy was supposed to, before the G7, have a deal with Donald Trump because it was urgent. What he's presenting now is bills that have a lot more to do with oil than aluminum. And is the Prime Minister admitting that his strategy was a failure? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, now, trade between Canada and the U.S. is over 90% of our exports, and they're tariff-free. That's a success. We are the only country in the world with that amount of success in our trade with the U.S. But we're not satisfied. We're not going to stop there. We have to find new markets. We have to make arrangements, fair arrangements with the Americans for steel, aluminum, and auto.
Honourable member for Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
Mr. Speaker, we know the Prime Minister doesn't buy his own groceries, but most families do. And what they're seeing at the grocery store is ever-increasing food prices. According to Canada's fiscal watchdog, the Liberals' newest broken promise is on their tax cut, with the average Canadian saving only $90 this year, well below the $825 promised. This isn't even enough for a week's groceries. Did the Prime Minister mislead Canadians during the election? Is he misleading them now? Or both?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Family.
Mr. Speaker, it's a little bit rich for the opposition to be talking about leaders who don't buy groceries while they have a leader who's in subsidized housing, not buying groceries. However,
hey, Pierre is a great content creator who earns every buck he makes.
That this government is laser focused on making sure that Canadians have what they need. As we know, actually, poverty rates have been going down since 2015, and that's because of our investment in Canadians through programs like dental care, affordable child care, and the Canada Child Benefit. Mr. Speaker, we will build the strongest economy in the G7.
The Honourable Member for Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is a broken record of broken promises, and the Prime Minister said, judge me by the price at the grocery store, and that he's the man with the plan. Well, he's failing. Just since the start of this year, beef up 34%, oranges up 26%, apples up 18%, and baby formula up 9%. So this is making it harder for families trying to put nutritious food on the table. Will the Prime Minister do the right thing and table a budget that actually cuts taxes and reverse his inflationary policies?
Wow.
The Honourable Secretary of State for the Canada Revenue Agency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this government was just elected by Canadians to deliver. We are cutting taxes for 22 million Canadians. We are permanently cutting the carbon tax. We are cutting taxes for first-time homebuyers. Mr. Speaker, our focus is on building the strongest economy in the G7. I ask the party and the members' offices to join us. Get on board. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Well, old habits die hard, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister promised to cut consulting fees, but is now raising them by 37% to a record-smashing $26 billion this year. That's $1,400 for every Canadian household. And he's doing it, knowing that Canadians have not received value for money from these Liberal insiders. Why is this Prime Minister breaking his promise and increasing spending on consultants?
The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we are reducing the use of external consultants while making sure that our public service has the tools and the expertise to deliver on the essential missions it has for Canadians. And I'm very proud to have been elected on a mandate to make government more efficient so that we can invest more in defense, invest more in innovation, invest more in the supports that Canadians need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
More broken promises with this Prime Minister. Broken promises on spending, tax cuts, defense, on elbows up with the U.S., and now on consultants, while offering Canadians a meager $90 tax cut this year. He's not getting the money back from GC Strategies and is paying yet another consultant to update websites for an undisclosed fee. Wow. Billions for consultants, peanuts for Canadians. Why is this Prime Minister giving consultants so much and Canadians so little?
That's sad. It's sad that they're still doing this.
The Prime Minister announced a $9.3 billion investment in Canada's defence, which means we will achieve NATO's 2% target this fiscal year.
I mean, that's
This
good.
is not only an investment in our armed forces, but
consultants?
also an investment in good-paying jobs. The member knows this in Canadian innovation and in economic growth. Our generational investment is strengthening Canada's role as a strong, reliable international partner in NATO, while rebuilding and rearming our terrific Canadian armed forces right here at home.
The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
Even the government's own fiscal watchdog says he's in the dark on this government's financial plans. He wouldn't even comment on whether the finances are sustainable. In the dark on how they're going to pay for nearly $500 billion. It's not enough to say, oh, we have a plan, and not know how you're going to pay for it. Perhaps they don't want their broken promises and ballooning deficits to come to light. There is no private sector discipline here, only secrecy, broken promises, and no budget. What exactly are they afraid Canadians will find in the numbers?
The Honourable Secretary of State for the Canada Revenue Agency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last time I checked, I think we were elected on a bold agenda to change, to cut taxes, to fight against illegal tariffs, to bring this country together and build one strong economy. But, Mr. Speaker, the rhetoric I hear across, it's the same old politics the former member Pierre of the Conservatives peddled for 2 decades. In the ballot box, just like business, if you don't deliver after 2 decades, you lose your job. He lost his job, Mr. Speaker. We have our jobs. We are elected. We are here to build the strongest, most resilient.
The honourable member for Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup, Kataskamik-Temiscouata. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals promised Canadians tax cuts of $825 a year. The PBO confirmed this was yet another broken promise. The average Canadian will save just $90 this year, $7 a month. And for low-income seniors, it's even worse, just $50 a year or $4 a month. It's not even enough for a cup of coffee. Did the Prime Minister mislead Canadians during the election campaign? Is he still misleading them today, or is it both? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's fascinating to hear that question coming from a Conservative who voted against the Canada Child Benefit, who voted against dental care, who voted against thousands of daycare spots for Quebecers. Now we have this tax cut that's important for 22 million Canadians. I'm very proud of it. The honourable member for Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup, Kataskamik-Temiscouata. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Prime Minister continues to break promises on taxes, spending, consultants, our relations with the U.S., and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, Canadians are paying more and more at the grocery store. The price of beef has gone up 34%, oranges 26%, apples 18%, and even baby formula is almost 10% more. Enough with the big talk that ends in broken promises. Will the Prime Minister finally table a real budget, cut taxes, and reverse his inflationary policies? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation. Mr. Speaker, this is the first bill we've passed. It cuts taxes for 22 million Canadians. It will have a direct impact for millions of Canadians all across the country with an $825 tax cut for families. We're very proud of this. This is exactly why we were elected, and that's precisely what we're delivering. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, did you know who's happy about C5 apart from the Conservatives and the oil patch? Brookfield, the former firm of the Prime Minister, is benefiting. They have a company that owns a nuclear reactor. They also own natural gas processing plants. C5 is helpful there, too. They also own pipelines and oil sands. C5 is there for that, too. And C5 is there. The Liberals are using closure in order to please Brookfield shareholders, including the Prime Minister himself. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you who's proud of C5. It's aluminum workers in Quebec who elected more than 44 Quebec Liberal MPs. It's steel workers, too, in Ontario who are affected by this trade war with the U.S. So instead of pointing at us, the Bloc should be honest and help us so that we can come up with a solution to this trade war. The honourable member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. The minister says that she's protecting workers, but C5 doesn't do that. no one would be asking these questions if the Prime Minister didn't have this involvement with Brookfield. The Prime Minister himself stands to gain from C5. This bill should be studied in depth. The Prime Minister should be among the first who support proper committee study of this. The Prime Minister should be the first person fighting any appearance of conflict of interest. Will he stand up and do that? The Honourable Government House Leader. I understand why the Bloc doesn't want to build a single strong Canadian economy, but I have more of a hard time understanding why the Bloc is opposed to major projects that Quebecers have dreamt of, like hydroelectricity, like infrastructure, like uniting this country to create job opportunities. Instead of insulting, baseless insults, they should get on board and build an economy together to give Quebecers opportunities.
For Regina Louvain.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Canada's fiscal watchdog confirms another broken Liberal promise, this time on their tax cut. On the campaign trail, this Prime Minister promised Canadians an $800 income tax cut. But the Parliamentary Budget Officer just confirmed the average Canadian will save $15 a month, and low-income seniors will only save $10 a month, which won't buy a gallon of milk from the Lumsden Co-op. My question is, why did the Prime Minister mislead Canadians in the last election?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, that Member of Parliament, and we thank him for it, and his entire caucus colleagues voted for the exact tax cut that we committed to Canadians by July 1st, so that on July 1st, in every pay stub in Canada, everyone who pays income tax will have a reduction from 15% to 14%. In the first tax bracket, that will put up to $840 in the pockets of Canadian families. Happy Canada Day. We are delivering for Canadians.
Well, let's see it happen.
For Regina Louvain.
Well, sad but true, Canadians are getting used to them being misled by that Liberal in particular, Mr. Speaker. On to another Liberal failure. A damning new report from the Liberals' own housing agency has declared the death of housing affordability in our country. They said Canada needs to double housing construction to restore affordability, but the Liberals' record is dismal. Housing starts in Vancouver, down 10%. Toronto, down 58%. Guelph, down 78%. Hamilton, down 50%. London, down 72%. Simple question, when will this housing minister stop buying investment properties and stop building homes for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll caution the member opposite. He's leaving out all of the Canadian communities that are increasing their housing starts right now.
That's true.
Housing starts across Canada are near record levels.
That's right.
That's good news to celebrate, but it's just a start for us. Mr. Speaker, Canadians elected the party that's running to double housing construction in Canada.
Right.
We hope you'll support us on that.
Yeah, they should.
A reminder to direct his comments, the minister to direct his comments through the chair. The honourable member for Riding Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, a damning report by the government's own housing agency revealed Canada needs to double housing construction in 10 years to restore affordability. In the last 10 years, housing starts are down over 10% in Vancouver, down 50% in Hamilton, down over 58% in Toronto, and down a whopping 78% in Guelph. Wow. This government's record on building bureaucracy instead of homes has failed young Canadians. When will the Liberals admit they've killed the dream of home ownership in Canada?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, we are laser focused on doubling housing construction across Canada. And I'm encouraged to hear the members opposite newfound concerns about housing construction and affordability. Yeah. Particularly given they voted against every significant housing program in the last few decades. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, our hope now is that they will support us to double construction and vote for affordable housing in Canada.
Excellent.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf, Jacques Cartier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're coming out of an election campaign where the Liberals were promising the moon to get elected, but their hypocrisy is catching up with them. They were going around with a commitment to give $800 back to Canadians. Today we're learning from the Parliamentary Budget Officer the truth. Honest citizens have been had. Instead of the $800 promised by the Liberals, are going to get $90 a year. This Prime Minister misled Canadians. Why did he do that? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, well, it's getting ridiculous over there because the member knows very well, or at least he voted for a bill that is going to be lowering taxes for all Canadians, for the 22 million people who, after July 1st, are going to get a tax cut. They're going to see in their paycheck a reduction in the tax paid in the 15% to 40% bracket. And that is going to save them up to $840 for a Canadian family. That's what we committed to do, and that's what we've done. The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Well, I have something to say to my colleague. We, the Conservatives, like Canadians, we were had. They lied, Mr. Speaker. So I would invite, Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government.
Wow. Yeah, you can't say lie.
Getting close to the line here, and I know that the honourable member is a good debater. He doesn't need to go over that line, so he can please continue.
Say he's a master
Mr.
debater.
Speaker, please allow me to say that the Liberals did not tell the truth. Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government said one thing during the election, and now they're doing something completely different. Already, after just 2 months, the Liberals have broken their promise to cut spending, to cut taxes, their promises on consultants, on defense. They've broken their relationship with the United States. These are facts, and even the Parliamentary Budget Officer says that the Honourable Minister of Government Transformation.
Subscribe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's incredible, that question. We know that 2 months ago, when they had their opportunity to present a plan to Canadians, when they presented their so-called costed platform, there was one number that was
He's got some tater tots in his pocket, I bet you.
There were 17 pictures of their leader in that so-called costed plan. That was the only real number in that plan. And our plan is going to have a positive impact in his riding and my riding, everywhere in Quebec, everywhere in the country.
Mr. Speaker, the world is becoming an increasingly dangerous and uncertain place. From rising geopolitical tension and economic instability to the impacts of climate change and conflict. Yet, Canadians can be confident that their government is putting their safety, security, and prosperity first by working closely with our allies and defending the values that matters to us. Can the Minister of Foreign Affairs update the House on Canada's engagement at the G7 and how we are working with partners to build a more secure and stable world?
Great question.
Foreign Affairs.
Canada has just concluded hosting an extremely successful G7 summit in Alberta at Carney.
I wouldn't say it was extremely successful.
And the world needs Canada's leadership, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister and his colleagues signed joint statements on critical minerals, on energy security, on transnational crime, Mr. Speaker. The world needs more Canada. Canada's ready to lead. Vive le Canada!
The honourable member for Caribou, Prince George.
The Liberals' catch-and-release policies are so bad that mayors and city councillors are preemptively writing letters to Crown Council begging them to keep the bad guys in jail. Mayor Rather Williams Lake recently wrote, "We vehemently oppose Jacob Funk's release. The actions of this individual have put our residents and property at significant risk. When Jacob Funk is in jail, the crime rate goes down. When he is out, the crime rate goes up. Why does this Prime Minister keep putting the rights of criminals ahead of Canadians?"
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, we're making it tougher for violent criminals to get out on bail, imposing stricter sentences for repeat offenders, but let me be clear. There is nothing in the law stopping judges and JPs from denying bail. The current law is that people who are a risk to public safety or a flight risk should not be given bail. So, Mr. Speaker, what's really going on here? Reports are saying that judges are making decisions because the provinces aren't providing the space needed to hold criminals. It's time for the provinces to join us and step up.
The honourable member for Caribou Prince George.
It's always somebody else's fault. 37 times. Jacob Funk has been arrested 37 times, and 37 times he's been released. Over 9 times in the past month. Wow. April 27th, assault with a weapon and uttering threats. May 27th, break and enter and disguising face. June 8th, assaulting a peace officer, resisting arrest and breach of release. June 12th, assault and uttering death threats. Wow. He's wreaking havoc on the citizens of Williams Lake, and this Prime Minister is letting him. When will he repeal his soft on crime policies and finally put victims' rights ahead of criminals?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, we are on the same page. Repeat violent offenders should not be released. So let me be clear again. There is nothing stopping judges and JPs from denying bail. The current law states that people who are a risk to public safety or a flight risk should not be given bail. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it's time for the provinces to step up. What is happening? Make sure the Crown prosecutors are well funded. Make sure there's space to hold these criminals. We're going to do our part. The provinces should do theirs.
Honourable member for Bruce Grey Owen Sound.
Mr. Speaker, crime has been rising in my riding since the Liberals formed government, and justice is too often delayed for victims. According to the latest Owen Sound Police Service's annual report, violent crimes are up 14.6%. My communities are worried. To make matters worse, more than 10% of the cases are now exceeding the Jordan limit, delaying justice further. When will this Liberal government reverse its soft on crime legislation and adopt a common sense plan to keep violent offenders behind bars and ensure victims and their families get the justice they deserve?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague for his question, and I have good news to report. Canadians elected a new Liberal government in part on the promise to advance reforms that will stiffen bail proceedings and adopt more serious sentences for violent repeat offenders. In addition to the changes to the criminal code that the members should expect to see later this calendar year, we're making investments to give law enforcement the tools that they need to prevent crimes in the first place. I am willing to work with members on all sides of the aisle to advance these important reforms to help keep communities safe.
The honourable member for Bruce Grey Owen Sound.
This old cabinet minister hasn't answered the question, Mr. Speaker. Premiers, police organizations, and victims are pleading for tougher penalties for repeat violent offenders. Just last week, West Grey Police rearrested a repeat violent offender for failing to comply with a release order and who was found in possession of fentanyl and prohibited weapons. The PM ran on a platform that included establishing a reverse onus for severe crimes and increasing penalties. Can the minister provide specific timelines as to when the government will implement these changes and reverse their soft on crime policies?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, when dangerous people who pose a threat to the public commit serious offences, they should be treated with concomitant sentencing and bail decisions from the courts. We are going to be advancing reforms that we campaigned on in the fall. We intend to specifically change the bail rules as it pertains to home invasions, auto theft, and organized crime. We also will advance new sentences when it comes to violent repeat offenders, and again, those participating in organized crime. I hope rather than just resorting to rhetoric in the House of Commons, they will actually work across partisan lines to advance the kinds of reforms Canadians are calling for so we can help.
The honourable member for Cambridge.
Mr. Speaker, it's like we're living in a Liberal rerun of Groundhog Day where the same criminals get arrested, released, and reoffend on a loop. Yes. In Cambridge, 2 men wanted on warrants were just busted with weapons and suspected fentanyl, a drug that's killing Canadians every single day. This endless cycle isn't an accident. It's the result of Liberal-made soft-on-crime laws, a revolving door of justice that's a gift to repeat offenders. When will this Liberal government shut the door on their Groundhog Day and finally put violent criminals and drug kingpins behind bars for good?
The Honourable Secretary of state for combating crime?
Fentanyl has torn through communities and ripped apart families, Mr. Speaker. We're working to take down fentanyl trade and gangs that profit from it. We've listed 7 cartels as terrorist entities under the criminal code, and I'm working closely with Kevin Brosseau, Canada's fentanyl czar, to put a laser-sharp focus on dismantling these drug networks. We will shut down fentanyl production and put those profiting from it behind bars.
The honourable member for Brandon Souris.
Violent crime continues to spiral out of control under these Liberals, devastating our families and our communities. In Brandon earlier this year, a 67-year-old man was beaten over the head with a baseball bat by a repeat offender out on bail completely unprovoked. Weeks later, a woman was assaulted in an elevator by an individual out on bail facing similar previous charges. These are just 2 examples of far too many violent assaults by repeat offenders released to wander our streets. So when are these Liberals going to get serious, reject their soft on crime agenda, repeal Bills C5 and 75, and put these criminals in jail, not out on bail?
That's all we're asking for, man, is safer streets in Canada.
Mr. Speaker, this new government's agenda is to be tough on crime. We're going to make it tougher for violent criminals to get bail, impose stricter sentences for repeat offenders. And when the topic of bail keeps coming up, Mr. Speaker, it is the job of provinces to administer the bail system. Right now, the law states that people who are a risk to public safety or a flight risk should not be given bail. So, Mr. Speaker, the provinces really need to take a look at what is happening in their courtrooms.
The honourable member for Abbotsford South Langley.
Mr. Speaker, extortion is up 357%. Earlier this week, an Abbotsford man was gunned down because of extortion. Following his death, there was another extortion-related shooting in the area. Yesterday, a BC man in the Lower Mainland was shot up. Another home was shot up. Thankfully, this time, no one was injured. But every neighborhood is terrified and innocent lives are on the line. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals eliminated mandatory minimums for extortion with a firearm. How many more lives must be taken by extortion before the Liberals put a minimum sentence back on extortion?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I'd remind my honourable colleague that extortion is illegal in Canada, and those who perpetrate it should be apprehended and punished to the full extent of the law. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, if the honourable member examines the section of the criminal code, he will see that there are mandatory minimums when it comes to certain offences committed with a firearm relating to extortion. Moreover, the maximum penalty is imprisonment for life. The rules reflect the seriousness with which the government takes extortion. We look forward to working with law enforcement to give them the tools they need to investigate and prevent these crimes from taking place in the first instance.
The honourable member for Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's crime rate is up. Homicides up 28%. Violent crime is up 50%. And extortion's up 357%. This week, CSIS reported foreign governments are using organized criminal networks to target Canadians. Our own intelligence agency is sounding the alarm, but these Liberals are ignoring it.
Well,
they voted against Conservative Bill C-381, which was jail, not bail to repeat offenders. Will this Prime Minister finally take public safety seriously by adopting our Conservative plan to lock up these violent criminals?
The Honourable Secretary of State
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Foreign interference and transnational repression are serious threats to Canadians and our democratic institutions. Through the Countering Foreign Interference Act, we have the modern tools needed to protect against it.
Hear, hear.
We will train 1,000 new RCMP personnel that will help combat foreign interference and transnational repression. We'll remain vigilant to protect our security, to protect our sovereignty, and to protect our democracy, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
I don't know what's worse, the Minister for Crime Reduction blaming the provinces for enforcing their bad bail laws, or the Justice Minister making witty statements like extortion is illegal. Anyone with a 5th grade education or higher knows that. The problem is, Mr. Speaker, extortion is up 357%, and these violent extortionists then get out on bail almost the next day. That's the problem, not that extortion is illegal. Everyone knows that. The real question is this: are they actually going to do something? The minister is saying we'll do something in the fall, so it's a summer of free crime. Canadians need changes now. Will they do it? Yes or no?
Look at that, man. That was passionate.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives talk a big game when it comes from a tough-on-crime agenda, but they fail to point out that one of their members earlier this week put a motion before the Justice Committee that would actually make it easier for those charged with intimate partner violence to be released on bail. We were elected on a campaign commitment to put forward rules that would strengthen the bail system, including specifically offenses tied to auto theft, to home invasion, human trafficking, and organized crime, and yes, to stiffen sentences for violent repeat offenders. If we could take the politics out of this issue, we would be happy to work together to advance public safety of this country. That's what Canadians demand. With or without the Conservatives, the Liberal government will deliver.
The Honourable Member for Honoré-Mercier.
Mr. Speaker, Saturday, June 21st is National Indigenous Peoples Day, a day in which Canadians celebrate the cultures, unique histories, and traditions of Indigenous peoples of Canada. Can the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations share more on the importance of National Indigenous Peoples Day?
The Honourable Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for the question and thank him for his hard work in his riding, Honoré-Mercier. This Saturday, I'm looking forward to celebrating National Indigenous Peoples Day in Yellowknife at the North Slave Métis Alliance's annual Community Fish Fry, which will also showcase entertainment and the vibrant cultures of Indigenous peoples, both locally and nationally. My sincere thanks to the North Slave Métis for hosting and to Heritage Canada for its continued support of community celebrations like this across the country. I encourage all residents and colleagues to take part in the festivities. It's an opportunity to celebrate the rich history, diverse heritage, and enduring strength.
The Honourable Member for Prince Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At a time when Canada should be expanding energy production, the Liberals are using their anti-energy laws to stop pipeline construction. Companies who've wanted to build haven't because of these laws. For 10 years now, this government has driven away investments away and stranded our energy sector. It is time for anti-energy laws like C-69, the shipping ban, and the job-killing industrial carbon tax to go. If the Liberal government really wants to see energy projects built, will they finally do the right thing for Canadians and repeal their anti-energy laws?
The Honourable Minister of Energy.
Mr. Speaker, what this government will do is present the One Canadian Economy Bill to rapidly advance projects of national interest and build one Canadian economy, not 13. The bill will grow our economy and support our sovereignty to ensure we build the strongest economy in the G7. I hope our colleagues across the aisle will support us.
The Honourable Member for Leduc.
Mr. Speaker, this week Canada hosted the G7, and one of the people on the Prime Minister's invitation list was the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia currently has a sweetheart deal with Canada, shipping over $2 billion worth of Saudi oil a year to our Canadian East Coast. Alberta oil shipped to the same place would face extremely onerous reporting requirements on upstream and downstream emissions, yet no such requirements exist for Saudi oil. Why?
Mr. Speaker, we are going to support our conventional and renewable energy business by getting the One Canadian Canada Act passed. It will grow our conventional economy. It will grow our conventional energy business. It will grow our renewable business. We hope our colleagues across the aisle will get on board.
Dude, he's been told exactly what to say in his ear.
Mr. Speaker, I'll note that the Liberal members seem incapable of using the word pipeline or oil in the House of Commons. Let me keep this simple. It is a fact that the emissions reporting requirement on Saudi oil being sold in Canada is less stringent than for Canadian oil being sold in Canada. Who in this Liberal government wants to stand now to defend this incomprehensible policy?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Rural Development.
We support oil and the development of all energy options across this great country, but we also support the Indigenous community, Mr. Speaker, because we realize as a country we must engage the Indigenous community, for even for them, this is a journey of economic and social justice. The benefits of anything we do, oil or gas or development that engages the Indigenous people, will be long-lasting, Mr. Speaker. We must reach
country.
The honourable member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last year our government took action. Yes, we took action to strengthen the workers' rights by introducing legislation to ban replacement workers during strikes and lockouts. Mr. Speaker, can the Minister of Jobs and Families update this House on this important step for workers and collective bargaining? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks.
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for South Shore St. Margaret's for this important question. And I've got great news, Mr. Speaker. C-58 comes into force this Friday. Using replacement workers compromises the fundamental right to strike. It can tip the scales, derail good faith bargaining, and heighten tensions in the workplace. And C-58 bans replacement workers, something that the Canadian labour movement has been asking for a long time. Mr. Speaker, this government got it done together with Labour, and we are very happy for this work with Canadian workers.
The honourable member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's #1 export is oil. It's a source of our prosperity and provides for health care, infrastructure, and good-paying jobs. Yet 10 years of liberal anti-energy laws have kept pipelines from being built and kept us dependent upon the U.S. markets. Laws like C-69, no new pipelines, C-48, the shipping ban, the energy production cap, the industrial carbon tax. Energy companies won't build because of these laws. When will the Liberals finally end their war on Canadian energy and jobs?
Honourable Secretary of State for Rural Development.
Mr. Speaker, the problem with the Conservatives is half of them don't like poilievre, the other half like poilievre, and another half can't count. The problem, Mr. Speaker, is they ought to look at Canada as a country. We're the third largest.
That's dirty. That's dirty. What are you going to do about it, Speaker? What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it, boy?
The honourable member can rewind a little bit if he wants.
Oh, he's letting him go again.
Canada is the third largest oil-producing country in the world. That is something that we should be proud of. And back from Saskatchewan, where I come from, we have a phrase, lead, follow, or get out the way. These guys can't lead. They're too arrogant to follow, so at least get off the way.
The honourable member for Vancouver East. The honourable member for Vancouver East.
The Liberal and Conservative coalition joined hands to fast-track Bill C-5 to bypass environmental reviews, ignore provincial jurisdictions, and trample on the constitutional rights of Indigenous peoples. Ontario chiefs are rejecting Bill C-5. UBCIC Chief Stuart Phillip called it a complete betrayal of Canada's commitments under the UN Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The Assembly unanimously condemned this bill and are calling for its immediate withdrawal. Chiefs across the country are saying nothing is off the table if the bill is passed. Will the minister do the right thing and withdraw Bill C-5?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We'll be looking for projects that have Indigenous support and, even better, Indigenous equity in the project. This legislation is about supporting projects that are not only shovel-ready but shovel-worthy. Projects that respect Indigenous knowledge and uphold Aboriginal and treaty rights. This legislation mandates that there must be meaningful consultation and accommodation with Indigenous rights holders during both the process of determining which projects are in the national interest and the development of rigorous conditions for each project. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Indigenous rights holders and civil society groups have been clear. Bill C-5 violates constitutional rights, escalates the climate crisis, and endangers workers' health and safety. But the Liberals and Conservatives are teaming up to pass this bill without proper consultation consultations. The AFN, the ITK, and NAN have indicated that it is an ungracious invitation to the Supreme Court. This will stall our economy and the creation of good jobs. Will the Liberal government uphold its constitutional obligations and keep this bill out of the courts?
The Honourable Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These rights are affirmed by the Constitution, and the duty to consult and accommodate has been set out in a series of Supreme Court of Canada decisions.
That's right.
The One Economy Act, specifically in both the preamble and throughout the body of the legislation, requires the government to consult with Indigenous rights holders. Section 5.7, 7.2, 8.3. Again, we will be consulting with Indigenous right holders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Parliamentarians, I would like to take the floor to highlight a birthday, a very important birthday for our parliamentary family.
Nobody cares. Anyways, that's in the live stream, everybody. Thanks for tuning. See you tomorrow. That was weird. Question period's weird. We need Pierre back in the house. Mark Carney sucks. Peace and love.